Hi, my name is Stefan Von Muellen. I'm one of the founding members of Mare Liberum. We're a boat building, publishing kind of art collective that formed in Gowanus, Brooklyn about 5 years ago in response to the art world. So we kind of are in one sense artists, but then we also have been building and designing boats and running some programming around all of that for the last few years. Our mission initially was kind of in response to a show that a friend was putting together that was looking at art off the grid. And so Ben Cohen, Dylan Gauthier, and myself kind of formed our little collective and wrote a paragraph of some art speak around, we want to help the people of New York City get off of the islands that they live on and get into the water that they're surrounded by, which is so often overlooked and hard to get at, and lower the bar to get people out on the water. So we started with, these have gotten some use, obviously, but we started with a plywood dory design that was based on kind of a historical, traditional boat design from kind of this part of the country and on up north. And we made some stencils that you'll see here, basic outlines, and had them fabricated so that we could spray paint those onto plywood, cut them out with a jigsaw, assemble them together with construction adhesive and house paint, and turn a boat around in a day and get out on the water. And as part of that, here you can see some of those stencils also. And as part of that, we also published some instruction sets on how to do that, and essentially sort of open source that by having newsprint broadsheets with a step-by-step and some inspirational stories of harrowing danger on the New York City harbor historically, and encouraged people through workshops and through showing them and giving away our instructions and publishing them online to make their own boats, or come join us and make boats as fast as you can and get as many out there on the water as possible. So we made these stories for about 3 years, and we did end up building a small flotilla through all of the art opportunities we had, as well as workshops we ran out of the Gowanus studio space. And we ended up with, a pile of boats outside, and we had lent those boats over the years to a number of other projects as this kind of maritime, water-borne art scene sort of grew in Brooklyn. So we lent them out for just Flux Factory events, and in the end, we actually kind of succeeded in sort of making the water a lot more accessible. But ultimately, a couple of years ago, we decided that these dories had some fundamental errors in their design, even in our own mission statement. They were a little bit awkward for 2 people to carry, so kind of 3, but you really wanted 4. You had to put them on a car, and they were heavy, and they were also starting to fall apart. So we wanted to update our fleet, and I worked on a project with Marie and was inspired to simplify a simpler boat. So we looked at some skin-on-frame kayak designs, got some bamboo from my parents' backyard, and with zip ties and bamboo and some epoxy and canvas and ultimately some recycled signage from the museum, we started making kayaks. And they're a lot more lightweight and just as fun. And we made a second set of instructions and have been disseminating them. We have a bunch here this weekend that we're giving away. And then earlier, and so this is one of the products of that project. And there's myself and Dylan Gauthier actually out on the water. Not to forget that, through all the boat building and the publishing and the art world nonsense, the goal is ultimately to actually get out there on the water. So you can see us actually doing that. And earlier this year, we had the opportunity, though, to do a residency collectively with Jean Barberis, who's now also more or less a member of the Mare Liberum collective, to go up to the Antique Boat Museum in Clayton, New York, where we spent 2 weeks there, and we finally got to work on a new kind of a boat, a third design that we're still sort of developing now, where we copied this deaccessioned boat from the collection of the museum by laying up paper in layers, paper macheing essentially the frame of the boat, the shape of the boat, until it had some kind of rigidity and strength all of its own, fitted it out with wood on the inside. You can see us working hard at that point, and we're doing the same process in a booth over over in the yard here this weekend. But ultimately, fitting it out with ribs and modeling, like pulled out the geometry of the original boat and reassembled it with a paper copy of that old boat. And 3 of us were able to take it on the St. Lawrence from Clayton to Montreal, and we are now, thank you. And so we're now working to like make that step by step and that process sort of more available for other people to try. So we're kind of documenting what we're doing here this weekend, and hopefully within the month we'll have a new set of instructions to be sharing with everyone. You can see here Jean and Arthur working hard on the St. Lawrence to get to Montreal. Jean had to get out of the country due to visa reasons, so that was a real deadline. We usually answered just Art World deadlines, but getting him safely across the border was a good one too. And so that's a brief history of what Mare Liberum has been up to. You know, and while we've been doing that, there's also been a bunch of other folks in Brooklyn and in New York working on other sort of boat projects outside of traditional boat building and boating to different ends. And with that, I will hand it off to Marie Lorenz.
What do I do now? Go forward. So I'm also an artist who works with boats and the landscape in New York. And I have a project called the Tide and Current Taxi, where I take people in boats that I design and build, and it's sort of like a taxi, where I take people all around the New York Harbor, from requests that people, they find me online and they request trips, and then I study the tidal charts, and I figure out when the best way to get to their locations are by the tide. But I thought I'd tell you a little bit about how it started. I went to school in Rhode Island, and I started making boats in the canals there between 91 and 95. In Providence, they were, when I was in school there, it was right at the end of this huge project where they were taking the I-95 and ripping it off of the old canal that ran through the middle of the city. So, but when I was in school there, all of downtown was basically like a construction site. And there were these tunnels that you could get into, and you could go for miles under the city, and you could explore all under the city by water. Now they've since sort of finished it all off and put seawalls all around the canal, but between 91 and 95 you could navigate all these subterranean spaces by water. So I started making boats that could navigate those spaces. And friends and I would have, at some point we had 5 or 6 boats, and they were strung up on pulleys underneath bridges. So if you knew how to get down under the bridge and climb out to them, you could lower down these boats and travel for miles all through the city in these waterways. I was majoring in printmaking at the time at Rhode Island School of Design, and that was my printmaking teacher, Cornelia McSheehy, who was very supportive of these projects, very interdisciplinary. And when I left Rhode Island, I traveled, wherever I traveled, I would look for a similar situation where a city waterway came up into the city, and I was interested in the way that specifically the urban environment and the water kind of connect or don't. This is in St. Petersburg, Russia, where I was attaching cameras to the front of a boat and taking long exposure photographs as I went through the water. This is back in Providence, but many years later. Most of the projects at that point were sort of theatrical. My idea would be that somebody would see me in the water, or me and friends in the water, and they would see these sort of polluted waterways, these neglected sites in a different way. This is one of the most elaborate boats that I made in San Francisco. It was a skin-on frame, actually, but with a plywood interior. I was also drawing comics at the time, and so a lot of times, as you can see, the boats would sort of relate to the comic books that I was drawing, with costumes and sort of this theatrical sense. When I moved to New York in 2002, I started to look at the tides and the currents and think about a way to make a project that would engage the New York specifically. I sort of discovered 3 things when I moved to New York: using fiberglass and plywood in a construction, the significance of the tidal current in New York, which is the second fastest tidal current in the world, and also using the internet in my projects. So I started the Tide and Current Taxi in 2005, and I emailed everybody I knew and asked them to suggest trips. For the first year of the Tide and Current Taxi, I wanted to take people to work. So I asked people to tell me their route that they would take to work, and I would figure out the best way to get there by water and the best time to get there by the tide. This is my very first passenger of the Tide and Current Taxi, Joe Potts, who ended up having to swim from the middle of the East River to Roosevelt Island when the boat sank in just a total disaster, miscalculation of the wind and the tide and almost everything that you could possibly do. But the project went on from him, and this is years later my friend Yutaka coming out in the boat with me. You can see that the boat has been changed. It's a wider boat, higher sides, more stable in the water, and just sort of a better design for the East River. This is Yutaka. She's a professor at Syracuse, and this is her trespassing to get out of the water. I showed that to her students when I gave a lecture at Syracuse. I study the tidal charts of the harbor. These are some of the charts and maps that I use of the Eldridge Tide and Pilot book. Publishes maps of the New York Harbor that have drawings of 12 tidal intervals and what the tide is doing at all of those points. And it's an important guide because it's not as easy as high and low tide in the New York Harbor because there's all of these currents interacting. So I would say that over the course of the years, so I've been doing the Tide and Current Taxi for I guess 7 years. And I've probably taken maybe 120 people out in the boat, and it ranges. I would say about a third of the people that I take out in the boat are friends. This is my brother out in the boat in the East River, his crazy hair, and about a third of the people are friends of friends. This is two friends that are pointing out her home in Manhattan, actually, from near the Gowanus Canal. And then a third of the people I take out in the boat are complete strangers who contact me online. When I meet them at the water, it's the first time I've ever laid eyes on them in my life. And this is Mike Olshan, who really, I would have to say that most people that contact me know that the Tide and Current Taxi is sort of a proposition. It's sort of an artistic proposition to get somewhere by the tide. But Mike Olshan is the only person who's ever really considered it like a true tidal service. I mean, a true taxi service. He wanted to go somewhere in the Coney Island Creek, and he didn't know that this was an art project, and he just completely thought that it was like a water taxi. And actually, to the extent that when we were out in the boat, he said, "What? It looks like you know Mike, maybe." And he said, "Well, so what's your art like?" Because he knew I was an artist, and I said, "Well, you're in it." And he, I think he understood when he got back. When every trip that I take, I publish a web journal about it. This is one of the very first years of the Tide and Current Taxi, visiting a friend that used to live in the old Greenpoint Terminal Market. And there, the picture is online. I published a little web journal that just has a photograph and a line of text. There's one of the boats. I've had maybe 3 boats over the course of the 7 years. I've been all over the place. This is me and a friend on Hart Island. And really, I think the Tide and Current Taxi is about getting to know your own backyard, which is, the waterways of New York. And this is sort of a good example of what your backyard looks like, totally empty and free for you to go out in it. And with that, I am Tran. I think you need this, actually. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, you can hear me, right? Okay. Cool. My name is Tran, and I'm and I also am not a whole artist working here in New York, and I've been part of an art collective called the Miss Rockaway Armada, and then also worked with the artist Swoon to do her nautical art projects as part of her crew and legislation. Anyway, so this is a photo of Papa Neutrino, who was an inspiration to the boat community. He's been building junk rafts. He was building junk rafts for 35 some odd years. And one thing that Papua New Trino says, also these are two of our crew members. This is in Red Wing, Minnesota, singing along with Papua New Trino from our raft. This will make more sense in a second. So Papua New Trino talks about the 4 jailers, and he talked about it was the landlord, the boss, your mate, and yourself. And he was looking for total utopian liberation from these 4 jailers. So the concept of freedom from landlords is definitely resonates with me, and I think with a lot of these projects that were sort of, when you can't afford the rent, there's this idea that we all want to kind of go out and take to the water, and lots of these artistic sort of utopian living experiments have resulted from that. So this is when he came to visit us on this boat. This is us in the Mississippi River with the collective, the Miss Rockaway Armada. This is 110 feet long, and the middle boat there is a kitchen and a stage. And then in the back we had 2 car engines that were converted to boat engines. That's this group. So how do you do this? One of the neutrinos kind of was like, yeah, well, you can make it look like this. And this is our first meeting on top of the Empty Vessel, another art boat project that Paula and Stefan worked on, and Ben, lots of people have done. Anyway, so this is how you do it. So you draw a picture, and these are like boxes that you fill with foam and put decking across them. And we were using whatever materials were available around us, so we couldn't afford joist hangers, so we made our own with little chunks of wood. And this is kind of what it looks like when we were out in Minneapolis building these boats. So a lot of junk and barrels and wood and other stuff we could find. And it floats. It's not that hard to build a boat, apparently. So the other thing is people are always saying, well, is this legal? Like, how do you pass muster? So this is the Coast Guard boarding our vessel, but not that hard. You just do some research and basically have the right safety equipment on your boat, and you register it like you'd register a car or a motorcycle, and you don't even need a license. This is our boarding report where we pass muster. And this is another one of the fleet. There were a bunch of boats in the fleet. This one's called the Garden of Bling because it was entirely gold. And then we did something similar as Spoon initiated this art project on the Hudson River in '09. This one is called Swimming Cities of the Switchback Sea. And this is us coming down the west side of Manhattan in more junk rafts. There were 7 of them. This is us rounding the Battery. This one is called Alice. It's one of these crazy engines. And it's the same thing it's a little harder in New York. They're a little more uptight. But we kind of found the right guy in the Coast Guard to talk to, and he was like, you gotta apply for a regatta permit, but you just keep going, and then you figure it out. This is us in Venice, same Spoon art project that all of her friends helped to execute. This is going in the Grand Canal, and it's a different boat actually, but we packed up those boats you saw on the Hudson, put them in a shipping container, sent them to Slovenia, and then went across the Adriatic to go and crash the Venice Biennale art show. And so this is us going through the canal. We did not have permission to do this, but just went at 3 in the morning. So all of these collective projects have inspired me to do my own smaller project here at home. And so last year, there was a show called Seaworthy that the Gowanus Studio Space and the Elizabeth Foundation for the Arts, as well as Flex Factory, got together and had a bunch of artists build pieces. This is called The Boat for Singing Together, and many of us, Greg's in the audience, and actually lots of people in this room helped to build this boat. And I really love the feeling of singing in groups with people, and how there's this incredible feeling of liberation that happens when people sing in a group. It's no, I think it's not a coincidence that in religious movements and in political movements, you see people empowering their communities and coming together through music. So through group singing in particular. So I was super inspired by that. And then super inspired by being out on the water and the feelings of freedom that you can get out there, and the fact that, when you walk out on the shoreline, if you're walking below the high tide mark, you're not trespassing anywhere. So it's just this idea that you can have a different kind of access to space. So I wanted to put those two feelings together and built this boat and got people together and sang. And this is what the boat looks like inside. There's a hole in the center. It's kind of like sitting around a campfire, but you're putting your feet in the water. And the canopy is made of trees from my mom's backyard and some fabric. And this is the boat this year. It's at a new marina in Jamaica Bay. We're going to do it again next year, so please come out. This is what it looks like inside. We make these little books for people to sing along. Greg designed this book. And sit and just kind of, it's incredibly disarming when people are sitting in this boat. They're willing to sing together, and because they're kind of out in the water in this like totally vulnerable open space. And so this year I've been inviting artists instead of teaching all the songs myself. Just a couple weeks back we had Kip Malone come and teach some of his own new songs with Kip. This is the boat. Ben in the audience on the boat last year. And I think this is Stefan right here. So it really makes the most sense though when you see it in action. So here's a little video scripted from our Kickstarter.
Would you come to me? Would you come to me? For to ease my pain. If you needed me, I would come to you. I would swim the seas for to ease your pain. Second verse. Please with me now, since I showed her how to lay her lily hand in mine. Who would ill agree? She's a sight to see, a treasure for the poor to find. If I needed you, would you come to me? Would you come to me? For to ease my pain. If you need